Welcome to DynamicsCon. Let's get ready to learn from our Microsoft Dynamics 365, Dynamics GP, and Power Platform superheroes. Stay tuned for our Microsoft Success Day tomorrow with content designed around implementation, optimization and expansion, user adoption and migration. Our multi-day event is free thanks to our heroic sponsors. Be sure to visit our roundtable sessions held throughout the conference by clicking on the Roundtables tab found on the left menu bar. Check out the event info section on the Home tab for more details on our rapidly growing Dynamics user group community. Here we go, superheroes! Please welcome Igor Zhdanov. Today he'll be presenting his session, Implementing a Dynamic Power BI Distribution Strategy. Please stick around after Igor's session for a live Q&A.
Hello, DynamicsCon community. I'm excited to join in the session and present to you an awesome topic, a topic that I'm super passionate about. We're going to talk about Power BI. I just want to take this moment and thank everyone in the DynamicsCon community, everyone who's joining to do some learning, but also the ones that are coming to do some presenting and share the knowledge. Also want to thank those who have made this event possible for all of us to be here. My session today is called Implementing a Dynamic Power BI Distribution Strategy. Here's a little bit about myself. I'm a BI and analytics lead at Stone Ridge Software. Stone Ridge Software is a Gold Microsoft partner. I have 9 years of experience in data analytics and various types of reporting, financial reporting, sales reporting, operational reporting, manufacturing, kind of done it all throughout the years. I have over 5 years of experience in the Microsoft stack, various Dynamics 365 applications, Azure products, Power Platform, and recently have been specializing and enjoying working in Power BI. I have a degree in accounting from the Pennsylvania State University. For all those Penn State Nittany Lions out there, we are Penn State. I love spending time with my family. I have a daughter who's 4 years old. She's a lot of fun. And my wife and I and her love to go to the beach just to hang out and get some sun. And we love experiencing new cultures together and eat a lot of yummy food. I want to give you an outline of the presentation. Just 3 things that I kind of grouped together. The first thing is we're going to talk about having a lack of strategy around Power BI distribution. Then we're going to talk about the 4 major functions in Power BI that have to do with distribution. And I'm going to end this presentation with doing a live demonstration for you. I work as a consultant and I get a lot of questions. As you can imagine, I kind of have a unique perspective when it comes to working with Power BI users. And here are the sorts of questions that I get. How do I maximize visibility into key company Power BI reports? You know, we invested all this money to purchase a cloud reporting platform, but now how do I leverage this tool to maximize visibility? I bought it for visibility. How do I now maximize it? How do I ensure a single source of truth in my Power BI reports? You know, once again, I purchased this tool in order for me to have all of my reporting in this one place. Now, how do I ensure that all of the reports and data sets and all the assets I have in Power BI or floating around my organization, how do I ensure that there's truth in the numbers, there's consistency in the numbers, there's accuracy in the numbers? How do I co-develop Power BI solutions with other developers? How do I know when to create a Power BI app versus keeping the report in a workspace? How do I know if I should publish a report to my personal workspace versus a reporting workspace? How do I manage access and security in Power BI most effectively? Now, I'm aware of the functions and I understand how securities work and it's dynamic, it's robust, but how do I manage it all and make it most effective for my organization? How do I organize my Power BI content and workspaces? How many workspaces should I have? What should I call those workspaces? Who should I give access to in those workspaces? How do I minimize loss of valuable content during employee turnover? That's a big one. All of those questions have one thing in common, and they're all tied to strategy. And that's what I want to talk to you about. So we're not going to answer every single one of these questions, but here's the main idea that I want you to keep from this session. This is the one thought that I'm going to try to group my presentation around. Power BI is the best business intelligence tool in the market and has great functionality for dynamically distributing content. But there's a big but. But you must learn best practices to use it most effectively. Let me do that again. Power BI is the best business intelligence tool in the market and has great functionality for dynamically distributing content. It's already there, but you must learn best practices to use it most effectively. And that's what I want to do today. In the limited amount of time that we have, I'm going to try to focus on the distribution functions in Power BI and kind of cover some best practices and some things to look out for so that those listening to this presentation can learn from others, from mistakes that others made. I'm going to start with some definitions. Here are the four major distribution functions. And then what we're actually going to do is dive into each one of these and take a look at a greater detail. So first, there's the My Personal Workspace. My Personal Workspace is a personal workspace for a Power BI user to work with personal content. Only the user and an admin have access to My Workspace. So you can share individual content from your personal workspace. Then there is Workspace. It used to be called App Workspace, but now it's just called Workspace. And that is used to collaborate and share content with colleagues. You can add team members to your workspaces and collaborate on content development together. Then we are in the realm of apps. You can create apps in Power BI for distribution, and an app is a collection of dashboards and reports built to deliver content to the Power BI consumers in your organization. Apps are interactive, but consumers can't edit them, so they're view only. And then there's the notorious share button that's kind of peppered all throughout the tool, but it's a button that allows you to give others access to individual content in Power BI service. Those are the four major distribution functions in Power BI. So how do I know when to use each one? That's the question that we're going to try to ask as we look at each one of these. So first, we're going to look at My Personal Workspace. So the personal workspace, here's what it's best used for. It's best used for personal development, proof of concept type testing, learning, temporary analysis. It's really the place where you play, right? As an analogy, I put home playroom. This is your playroom. This is where you should be. This is where you should be publishing content for your own personal use. What's the biggest benefit? Well, the personal workspace allows you a lot of freedom and flexibility, right, for personal development. You're able to use the personal workspace to publish quickly into Power BI service and see how your report is going to look like and function like as you develop it in Power BI desktop. There's no license that is needed to use personal workspace. So you can use Power BI in all of its function up to this point without a license. You can download Power BI desktop, you can create a report, you can query data, and then you can publish it into your own personal workspace without a license. You can share out of your personal workspace using the share button, but as soon as you talk about distribution and sharing, that's when you need to get the proper licensing. So a pro license at least is needed for you to share out of your personal workspace. I put these two little atomic signs here, and you're going to see that throughout these next few slides, things to look out for. So when you see the atomic sign, you should hear that nasty sound, nasty alarm in your mind. Here's the things that you should look out for. Critical company content should not be stored in personal workspaces. Unfortunately, I see that a lot because it's so easy to publish to your own personal workspace than to overuse the share button and just individually share reports. But what happens when the individual that has all of these Power BI assets in their personal workspace all of a sudden decides to get a job at Microsoft and leave the company? Well, that personal workspace can be accessed. It's actually a recent function that's been developed You can have an admin now access that personal workspace, retrieve that content, but only for 90 days. What happens if you don't do that in the 90 days? What happens if you just miss going into the person's personal workspace when they leave and retrieve all those valuable assets? Well, you lose them. Now imagine losing all of this content that might have taken years to develop when a person decides to leave the company. So it's something that you need to keep in mind, right? My personal workspace should not be the place where you store critical company content. It's just not the place for it. So, what is the place for that kind of content? That gets us to talking about the workspace. So, what is the workspace? The analogy that I like to use here, it's not your personal playroom anymore, it's your park playground, right? And the key word is collaboration. Here is where you begin to collaborate with others, either in the development or just in the distribution of content. So here's what it's best used for. It's used for collaboration and it's used for small distribution. I would say the primary purpose is to group content and collaborate in development. That's the whole idea behind a workspace. You can have multiple developers working in the workspace at the same time and developing solutions. But there's a secondary purpose, and that is to distribute content to smaller teams. So if you only have a handful of users in your organization, and I work with a lot of small and medium type business in the job that I currently work on, so apps might be an overkill, right? If you only have a few users and you're looking just to distribute a few key reports, then the workspace is a great place for you just to use it for distribution. So the best way to create a workspace is to actually identify the app that you want and then create the workspace. How does that make sense? Well, workspaces and they were previously called app workspaces, right? You should think about the workspace as that place you're creating for that future app development. Because currently in Power BI, you can create apps only off of individual workspaces. So it's best to keep that in mind. So when you're thinking of the app and developing this grouped content, think of that individual workspace and group your content in that particular way so you can create that app off of the workspace. What does a workspace allow you to do? Well, it allows you to delineate security, right? I'm going to have a little bit more on the next slide around security and how to manage workspace security, but it allows you to have various tiers of security. Various types of users could be added to your workspace. Because of that, it also allows for delineation of development responsibilities, right? So you can have people that are allowed to edit individual content in the workspace and others restricted from that editing. So if you have, for example, people developing your data sets, they can be working and editing the data sets. They can have that access and security set up. And then you can have your report writers that can come in and collaborate on that development, use those shared data sets to be able to create awesome content. So it allows for security delineation and responsibility and development delineation. Atomic sign, ready? There is no hierarchical folder structure in the workspace. So the content needs to be narrow in scope. So what does that mean? Just imagine a folder on your computer. You can create a folder really easily on your desktop. You can create a folder within a folder. In that folder, you can create another folder. And in that folder, you can create another folder. You can continue to do that endlessly. That's a hierarchy. Well, in Power BI workspaces, there is no hierarchy. So whatever workspace you create, you can't layer it. You can't create additional workspaces within that workspace. So what that means is all of this content that's going to be published to this workspace is going to grow. And eventually, you're going to have a lot of things in that one workspace, and that's going to be a challenge, right? You're going to have a really hard time looking for that content. So it's best to keep that in mind when you're creating the workspace, right? Keep the scope of the workspace narrow. So here are some ideas for you. Some ideas of how you can kind of name your workspaces or organize your workspaces. There's not just one right way to do it. These are just some ideas for you. You can do it by subject area and purpose, kind of sales or finance or inventory focus. You can do it by department. your accounting department, your marketing department, your operations department. You can do it by project, maybe individual project, by title of the project, maybe by the type of project, internal versus external. You can also do it by environment. So your development environment versus production environment as far as the data you're working with. Also, you can delineate by the types of content. So you can have workspaces for data sets, workspaces for data flows, workspaces for reporting. And actually, what you can do is have a mixture of all of these. So it doesn't mean you have to stick with one. You can totally have something like a subject area and actually focused on a specific environment, right? You can mix some of these to create efficient workspaces. But remember, the key is to keep your scope narrow in these workspaces because it does get out of control. The last atomic sign, they're number 6, minimize the number of people who can edit content in a workspace. It's really easy to set up workspaces, add all these individuals, and not pay attention to the different roles that you can add to people within the workspace. It's easiest just to add people as admins and just continue to add that team. Well, guess what? Admins have all of the access to edit all of the content within that workspace. And if I'm working with Bob on my team and Bob goes in and edits the data set that we've been working on, I see those edits, right? Um, and imagine having 10 different developers in there, developing different things, making changes. It's just not a good scenario. You should restrict the access to the people within the workspace. You can assign that. You can do that by the dynamic members, that roles that are available within the workspace. Here's the matrix that you can find right within the workspace. If you click a little button there to learn more, you can also Google this. If you just Google Power BI workspace roles, you will see this nice matrix put together by Microsoft. Now, it's not easy to read, right? So there is 4 different roles within the workspace, and there are a lot of different capability, right? So what I like to do is take complex things like this and make it really simple for clients. So here's what we can kind of get off the list right away. Admins have all access, right? Everything that you see on the list there of capabilities, the admin has all of that access. The viewer, on the other hand, notice they can only view the items. They can only read everything that's in the workspace. So let's just get rid of those two, right? We understand those. The admin has all the access. The viewer has very limited view-only access. So what's the difference between member and contributor? Well, here's the way I like to describe it. Notice what the member can do that the contributor can't do. Notice how most of the things on the list are actually around apps, right? Share an item or share an app, update an app, publish or unpublish and change permissions for an app. Remember, apps are meant for broad distribution. So here's what you're doing. With the member role, you're giving a person access to do that broad distribution within the company, where the contributor is only working within the workspace, right? It's kind of an oversimplification, but it's simple and it's easier to understand just to read all of these. So if you want somebody to be able to share or broadly distribute the content in these workspaces, you would want to make them a member so they can create and update apps. I hope that's helpful. Here's what an app is. The analogy is that I like to use here is a movie theater, and the key word is distribution, or you can even say broad distribution. So it's best used for combining content within that workspace, within an individual workspace, and then distribute it to a broad group of users. So you publish an app from a workspace and you allow read-only access to the users, and those users are then able to download that app right into their Power BI service. So you can set permissions on an individual level. You can also set permissions by groups, depending on how you have your security set up. So you can distribute this by individuals or your whole organization, or if you want to optimize it, you would want to create some groups in order for you to distribute it effectively to those groups. Here are 2 things to look out for apps. So number 1 is changes made on reports do not automatically change the app, but rather need to be republished. So imagine you had a lot of reports, let's say 3 reports, that you use to create an app, well, at the point of publishing, those reports is what carried over into the app. If since that publishing point you've made edits to the reports, those changes do not, the report writing changes do not make it up there into the app. So there's a republish button available in the workspace, and you should be versioning your apps. You should be republishing your apps regularly. So do look out for that. You should have a strategy around going through all of your apps regularly and making sure that the content in the reports behind that app has not changed and it doesn't need a new version published. So that's on the report changes. That's on the visualization. But notice number 6, the second thing, changes made to the data set do automatically update the data in the app. So the data sets that were created to create the reports that then you've published into the app, if those data sets are changed, if data is deleted, data changed, the apps will break. So do look out for taking care of your data set, making sure, once again, having the right permissions, having the right access to those data sets, giving the right rights to the people on your team does go a long way. So do look out for that. You want to have a strategy around that. Okay. And then the last one. Okay. And I'm giving this one a lot of grief, but really it's a powerful function. I just see it overused a lot, and it causes a lot of disorganization in various companies. So I like to talk negatively about it, but it's an awesome function, and its best use is this: it's to grant read-only access to individual reports and dashboards. So it's best used for sharing informal content with a small group of participants who work closely with one another. The share button is the button that tends to be overused. It's really easy to just have a report in your organization floating around your company because someone's sharing it individually with others. You know, Bob is working on a report and Igor comes over and sees the beautiful report and says, "Hey, I want that report. Can you share it with me?" And of course, being the nice guy that Bob is, he shares it with me. Well, then guess what Igor's going to do? He's going to share it with others. And then what you have is this report floating around in personal workspaces all across the organization, and no one knows the origin of the report. It gets lost, right? So once again, you want to use the share button, but you want to use it controllably. Don't overuse the share button out of personal workspaces. So the rule of thumb is in that number 4 there with the atomic sign is try to use workspace and app permissions to distribute content before reverting to using the share button. So try to do everything that we just talked about in workspaces, organizing them well, adding the right roles, then publishing apps if you need a broad distribution, and then reverting to the share button, because here's what it's used for, right? What's its best use? It's best used to allow access to one piece of content. So if you, for example, have a lot of things in one workspace, let's say it's a financial workspace and there's 10 different reports and certain reports are sensitive and you can't distribute that to specific individuals, but you don't want to go the route of creating a whole new workspace to give access to those individuals, well, you can select individual content out of that workspace to share it with individuals, right? So that one report that the individual needs, you can share using the share button. So you're taking that individual piece of content and then sharing it with the individual out of that workspace. So that individual does not have access to the full 10 reports that are in the financial workspace. They only have access to one. Okay, so uh, it limits access. You can use it for limiting access, and that's its best use. So the second atomic sign, when a report or dashboard is shared through the share button, the changes that are made to the report will be seen by the recipients right away. So meaning if I created a report and I'm actively developing it, but I've shared it with people, people are looking and viewing that report. If I make changes to it, people will see those changes, right? And once again, that gets out of control, right? If people are relying on that information and I don't know who's using it and how we're using it, I could be making changes that are not good for the team. right? So those are the four buttons, distribution functions. Here's the idea. Right now, after the session, we're going to have a Q&A. If you have any questions regarding anything that I just said on any of those four distribution functions, I welcome that discussion, that conversation. You could also find me on LinkedIn if you have any suggestions, and even this presentation and how I'm viewing these distributions functions. I'm totally open to suggestions. So here is the main idea, right? Here's once again the main takeaway. Power BI is the best business intelligence tool in the market. And I'm not saying that because that's the tool I work in. I truly believe it. I think it's the best tool in the market. And it has some dynamic distribution functionality. It's powerful. It's so useful. You can have a really awesome strategy around just distributing so much awesome content across your organization. But here's the catch. You have to stop, strategize, and learn best practices to use those functions effectively. I can't tell you how many times I'm working with clients and solving these sort of issues. Either disorganization, bad access, limited strategy going in, and starting to just develop things causes a lot of issues and a lot of hours spent then fixing the issues. Okay. So now I want to end my presentation with showing you exactly what I just talked about and where all of this lives. So I want to show you a demonstration. So I'm going to share my screen here. This is my personal workspace. I am in Power BI service right now. And this is where I have some random content because this is where I've been working to just test things, right? Everybody has my personal workspace. Now remember, no one else in the company except for the admin, except for your Power BI admin, has access to my personal workspace. So no one knows of all these reports that I have sitting in here unless the admin gets access to it. There's this section in here called workspaces, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to create workspaces, right? I know it's easy to start sharing things into your personal workspace, but I just want to show you how easy it is to actually create a workspace and how easy it is to publish right to that workspace instead of doing it through a personal workspace. So when you go to workspaces, there's this button at the bottom called create a workspace. And here's how easy it is. All you need to do is type in a name, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call it D365 Business Central Financial Reporting, and I'm going to call it prod. Okay, I know. Notice how many things I just identified with the name. Right. First of all, it's short. It's very descriptive. I've identified a specific system that I'm pulling data from for this workspace. I'm narrowing it down to Business Central. I'm doing it for financial reporting, and I'm using the production environment. So this is production type data. You can use some of this other function available for you. I would actually encourage you to do so. So you can add an image to your workspace, and it's actually really helpful. What I'm going to do is just add this Power Platform logo to it. Click OK. And you'll see that it becomes really useful because if you have a lot of workspaces, it's good to visually catch a logo versus reading all the workspaces. Also, do use the description, right? This is your way of documenting, right? You will write a nice description in here. It doesn't need to be a whole essay. It could be a really short description that actually lets the users know, well, what is actually in this workspace. So for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to write something like demonstration workspace created for DynamicsCon 2023. Okay, descriptive, people will know what it is if I share it with them. Then I hit save. That's how easy it is to create the workspace. So now that it's created, notice it's empty. I am completely free now to start publishing things into this workspace. Notice my description is right here. The name is very descriptive. And when I click my workspaces, it's really easy to find that little icon that I put in there. So super useful, super easy. So before I publish content into here, I want to actually show you how easy it is to set up access. There's this access button here in the top right corner. If I click access, here is where I'm able to give access into this workspace. So all I need to do is just start searching. For a name, it's going to look at my tenant. It's going to bring in individuals that I started looking for. Okay, so I'm going to do my colleague, Mayank. He's a Power BI developer on our team. Notice I can do individuals, or if I have groups set up in my tenant, I can totally bring in groups. Here is the 4 roles that we looked at in that matrix. If you want to see that matrix, there's this learn more button, hyperlink, that actually takes you to the Microsoft documentation behind those 4 roles. But I'm going to make him an admin, and I'm going to add him to this workspace. Here's another best practice. Make sure you have multiple admins added to every workspace, right? Once again, if I have only one admin that's able to edit the whole workspace, right, it might cause problems if I leave the company and go retire somewhere. But the idea is you want to have, as a best practice, multiple admins. That's how easy it is to set up access. I'm going to go ahead and close. And so now I and my colleague Mayank have access to it. Let me show you how quickly it is then to publish reports right into this workspace. So I have this dashboard that I've created, Business Central Financial Report Pack, that let's say I'm done with, and I want to publish this right into that workspace. All you need to do is sign in with your user account. When you hit publish, it's going to ask you to save changes. I'm going to save the changes I've made. And right away, it's going to give me all of the workspaces that I have. I'm going to find the one that I just created, D365 Financial Reporting Prod. I'm going to select it, and it's going to publish it to that workspace. Okay, it's just as easy as publishing it to my workspace. So it's only one extra step of creating the proper workspaces. So I can either click the link, I'm going to go ahead and just close it, go back to my workspace, and look at that. The data set and the report are already there. So now I'm able to open the report, and I'm able to share this report and view this report. So where's the sharing come in? Well, sharing comes in when I open up the report pack, this share button here. So what I'm able to do is share this report right out of this workspace with any individual that maybe I didn't add to the workspace. The share button is kind of peppered throughout. There's multiple places where you can share this report. Again, use it for limiting the access in workspaces rather than using that as your main distribution strategy. Okay. So now that I have created a report, I have some content. What I'm going to do is then create an app for you, show you how easy that app creation is. So once again, remember, apps are created on top of workspaces. So what I'm going to do is actually, from this report that I have in here, I can create an app. If I have multiple reports in here, I would be able to select which reports I would want in my app if I didn't want all of them. I'm going to hit create app here. Okay, notice it brings in my app name. Once again, I'm going to say app demonstration for DynamicsCon. Okay, I can add an app theme to this. Okay, there's some settings here, contact information. Then I go, next is content. Okay, I'm going to add content, and I'm going to take this report that I have here. I'm going to add it. That's the report that we were just looking at. The next thing I need to do is add the audience for this app. So I click next. I go next. Okay. And here's what I'm able to do. Here's how I'm able to manage the audience. Notice once again, I can grant access right away with this app creation to the whole organization. I don't have to manage the individual adding of people to workspaces, the share button. If I have a report that everyone in the company should just have access to, why not publish an app and use this function here? So entire organization, or once again, notice specific users or groups, right? So I'm going to continue to use my friend Mayank. And then that's all. So setup, content and audience. I click publish app. It's going to say, notice what it says. It typically takes some time for it to publish. All right. You're going to be able to preview this app when you are, when you, right when you finish publishing this. But the idea is it's not available for some time until it actually gets published. Others will not be able to see it for a little bit of time, notice 5 to 10 minutes, but it says it could take up to 1 day. So depending on the size of the app, it does take some time. But you hit publish, it's going to ask me, would you like to preview? Would you like to preview the app that you just published? I say go to app, and it's going to show me what it looks like when I have published it. Okay, notice my color scheme, the name of my application, all of these reports that I have created here are here, and I have access to it here. Okay, that's how easy it is to create workspaces, then create apps from them and distribute them. So remember, my personal workspace is just for personal items. My workspace is for that collaboration or small distribution. And then the app is for broad distribution. It's for me to send this report or reports out to multiple people in my organization. Okay, with that, let me switch back to my demonstration. I conclude my demonstration. Thank you so much for joining the session. I hope you learned something from the session. Once again, we're going to have a question and answer session right now. And if you have any questions, I welcome that interaction. Thank you. Take care.